Does the bulge between my legs distract you, human? Is that why you keep looking away? Laraxis's voice was a low, resonant frequency that vibrated more than it sounded, formal and devoid of inflection. But the question itself hung in the air of the observation chamber like a challenge, or perhaps an accusation. Kalen, seated across the polished obsidian surface of the evaluation table, managed not to flinch, which felt like a victory. He kept his eyes fixed on the intricate, glowing patterns shifting across the chamber walls, the ambient light reflecting the atmospheric energy fields of this floating city temple. He'd been here, or somewhere like here, for 3 cycles now. 3 cycles since his scout ship had malfunctioned catastrophically over the gas scar. 3 cycles since the sky vessels of the Althari had scooped his escape pod from the churning clouds below. He was a disgraced soldier, cashiered from the colonial fleet for a failure of judgment that had cost lives, though he still maintained it was the only viable option. Now, judgment was exactly what he faced, albeit of a very different kind. Laraxis was part of the hegemony of resonance, a sect or bloodline within the Althari ruling council, known for their stringent adherence to ancient laws and their unnerving ability to perceive emotional and energetic states. She was also undeniably striking. Her form was elegant, taller and more slender than a human, clad in flowing silks that shimmered with an inner light. Her skin itself seemed to possess a subtle, shifting luminescence, though he couldn't quite discern its base color. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, held a depth that was impossible to read, and currently, they were fixed on him with an intensity that made his own skin crawl. And yes, he had noticed the bulge. Althari biology was alien, distinct from human anatomy, and Laraxis's form, while outwardly feminine in its curves and proportions, possessed anatomical features that were foreign and frankly confusing to his human sensibilities. He hadn't been looking away because he was distracted, not in the way she implied, but because staring felt rude, intrusive, and potentially culturally offensive. "It's different," Kalen said, finally looking at her, his voice rough and low. "My anatomy is different. Yours, theirs. Anatomy is structured differently. Habit, I guess. I want to stare." He offered a small, wry smile that felt alien on his own face, after weeks of tense silence and formal interrogations. On Earth, staring at certain features is generally frowned upon, unless you're trying to pick a fight. Laraxis tilted her head slightly, a movement that was somehow both precise and fluid. A faint, almost imperceptible ripple of deeper azure pulsed beneath the surface of her skin near her temple. A reaction? It was one of the few tells he'd begun to notice in their emotionally restrained culture. "Frowned upon," she repeated, the words alien in her mouth. Frowning signifies displeasure. Displeasure indicates negative emotional resonance. "Your species finds certain anatomical differences distasteful?" "No, not distasteful," Kalen corrected quickly, feeling his face warm slightly. "Just private, or potentially misunderstood. Like if I look too long, you might think I'm interested, or making some kind of assessment I'm not qualified to make." He paused. "Also, I don't understand it. Biologically speaking." He gestured vaguely. "The whole setup, it's new territory for me." Laraxis regarded him for a long moment, her gaze unwavering. The azure ripple intensified momentarily, then faded. "My duty is to assess your resonance with our laws and our people," she stated. "Your observations regarding my biology are irrelevant to this task, unless they indicate a disruptive or hostile intent." Kalen held up his hands, palms out. "No hostile intent, counselor. Just bewilderment, and a healthy dose of caution. I'm just trying not to mess up." He had messed up enough for one lifetime. His assignment here had been simple: deliver a diplomatic courier ship to a remote Althari listening post. Then the engines had failed, the ship had broken apart, and suddenly he was the sole survivor. A curiosity, a potential threat, and maybe something else entirely, marooned amongst towering structures that defied gravity and a people who communicated as much with internal energy pulses as with sound. He was in over his head, again. "Your attempts at humor register as deflection," Lararis observed, her voice still level. "Does this indicate an unwillingness to engage with the process?" "It indicates I'm deeply uncomfortable and trying to lighten the mood," Kalen said flatly. It's a human coping mechanism. We tell jokes when we're scared or out of our depth. Keeps the panic down. He met her gaze directly. And counselor, I am definitely out of my depth here. The azure shimmer returned. A longer, slower wave this time. It felt less like a reaction, more like a subtle shift in her internal state. Panic is inefficient, she said softly. It disrupts resonance. The hegemony values control. He believed her. Their entire society seemed built on layers of intricate control over their environment, their emotions, their interactions. And he, Kalen, the disgraced, sarcastic human, was the ultimate disruption. The next few cycles fell into a pattern that bordered on the absurd. Kalen was given quarters, sparse but clean, within the outer perimeter of Laraxis's sector of the floating city temple. He was under constant observation, not always visible, but he could feel the subtle hum of sensors and the watchful presence of Laraxis and her retinue of silent, robed attendants. His days consisted of more interviews with Laraxis, cultural orientation sessions delivered by emotionless holographic projections, and carefully supervised excursions onto the crystalline pathways and light bridges that connected the various sections of the city. Laraxis's questioning continued to be formal and probing, focusing on his history, his military service, which seemed particularly fascinating and concerning to them, and his intention. She used precise, often ritualistic language, while he responded with blunt, often sardonic honesty, peppered with earth idioms that left her visibly, though subtly, puzzled. So, this disgrace you speak of, she said one cycle, as they walked along a pathway overlooking a breathtaking vista of energy currents flowing below. It carries significant weight in your society? Depends on the society, Kalen replied, kicking a loose crystalline shard that bounced with a faint musical note. In the military, yeah, it means you're tainted. Probably won't get another command. Might even lose your pension. He shrugged. Out here, stuck with you guys, probably doesn't mean squat. You seem more interested in whether I'm going to, phase out your infrastructure or something. Your past actions inform our assessment of your future potential for disruption, Laraxis stated, her tone even. A failure in judgment on the battlefield could translate to a failure in judgment within our sacred spaces. Fair enough, Kalen conceded. Though, to be clear, my judgment call saved some people. Just not the ones command wanted saved in that exact moment. He glanced at her. Sometimes, doing the right thing gets you court-martialed. Laraxis stopped walking, turning to face him. Her eyes, those deep expressive eyes, seemed to hold a flicker of something he couldn't name. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps a reflection of a different kind of judgment. The skin around her eyes shimmered with a faint, warm gold. Right and wrong are absolutes, she said, defined by the resonance of the ancestors in the flow of energetic harmony. On Earth, they're a little fuzzier, Kalen said, leaning against the railing that hummed with contained energy. Depends on who's writing the history books, I guess, or who won the war. His cynicism felt like a barrier, but it was a familiar one. He noticed a ripple of violet beneath Laraxis's skin, quick and sharp. Disagreement? Displeasure? It was still hard to tell. Such a philosophy, volatile, she stated. It lacks the stability of ancestral truth. Truth is also pretty volatile when you get down to it, Kalen murmured, more to himself than to her. Especially when you're the one living it. As they continued their walk, they encountered a procession of Othari in ceremonial robes, their movements slow and deliberate. They carried glowing artifacts that hummed in sync, filling the air with a deep, resonant sound that Kalen felt in his bones. Laraxis immediately adopted a more rigid posture, her subtle shimmering ceasing entirely, her expression becoming utterly blank. She motioned for Kalen to stand back, away from the path. As the procession passed, one of the robed figures, older and bearing more intricate markings, paused and turned towards Laraxis. His gaze swept over Kalen with an icy intensity that felt like a physical blow. The Althari elder spoke to Laraxis in their resonant language, the vibrations sharper, laced with an undercurrent that Kalen instinctively recognized as disapproval. Laraxis responded with precise formal phrases, her posture deferential but her gaze steady. The elder's skin near his temples pulsed with an angry crimson. He gestured towards Kalen, the gesture sharp and dismissive, before continuing on his way. Lyraxis remained frozen until the procession was well past. When she finally turned back to Kalen, her face was composed, but he saw the faint, lingering violet stain beneath her skin. That, Kalen said, breaking the silence, felt unpleasant. Like I just stepped on someone's sacred toe. That was Elder Cygnus, Lyraxis said, her voice low, the resonance tighter than usual. Head of the bloodline of the Crimson Resonance. They adhere to a Etriker interpretation of the laws regarding purity, Kalen repeated flatly. And me, the human, am the walking embodiment of impurity. I take it. Lyraxis didn't answer directly. She simply looked at him, and the lingering violet seemed to deepen, tinged with a hint of something else he couldn't quite read. Perhaps resignation. Perhaps a dawning weight. He had a feeling his presence here was more than just a cultural curiosity. It was a complication, a significant one, especially for Lyraxis. The cultural tension escalated after the encounter with Elder Cygnus. Kalen was moved to more restricted quarters, closer to the central, ancient structures of the city temple, but also more confined. His supervised excursions became less frequent, replaced by longer periods of solitary observation or intense, focused sessions with Lyraxis. Her questions grew sharper, delving into the motivations behind his actions, his capacity for violence, and his understanding of concepts like bond and oath from a human perspective. It felt less like an assessment and more like an interrogation under subtle pressure. He sensed the shift in the atmosphere of the city. The air hummed with a different energy, tighter, more brittle. There were fewer casual movements in the pathways, more robed figures with watchful eyes. He felt like a knot tightening in the delicate fabric of their society. One evening, as a storm raged in the atmosphere below, casting flickering light through the observation panels of his quarters, Lyraxis visited him alone. This was unusual. She typically had attendants present. She stood by the panel, watching the chaotic dance of lightning and energy, her silhouette outlined against the turbulent sky. Her inner light was muted, almost absent. The hegemony is in turmoil, she said, her voice barely a whisper, lacking its usual resonance. Your presence has agitated the balance. I gathered, Kalen said, running a hand through his short hair. Elder Cygnus wasn't exactly radiating welcoming vibes. Something about purity. The bloodline of the Crimson Resonance believes your arrival is an ill omen. Lyraxis continued, still watching the storm. They interpret the atmospheric disruptions of the gas scar as a sign of cosmic displeasure, tied to the disruption of our ancient patterns. Ancient patterns being, that's me showing up? Kalen asked wryly. Seems a bit dramatic. The patterns are everything, Lyraxis said, finally turning to him. Her eyes glowed faintly, not with the usual gold or azure, but a pale silvery light he hadn't seen before. Our city, our laws, our very existence, is woven into these patterns. A foreign thread can unravel the whole tapestry. She walked towards him, her movements slow and deliberate. She stopped a few feet away, her gaze intense. Elder Cygnus and his faction are pushing for a judgment based on ritual law, a judgment that demands. Kalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Elimination? Lyraxis nodded. To restore the balance, to cleanse the disruption. She paused, her gaze dropping slightly. There is an ancient ritual, the survival pairing. Kalen waited, his breath held. During times of extreme imbalance or threat, Lyraxis explained, her voice regaining a fraction of its formal resonance. Individuals deemed disruptive or incompatible are paired and sent into a trial zone, a contained environment designed to test resonance and survival against calibrated dangers. Only those who achieve perfect synchronization, perfect resonance can complete the trial. Failure is permanent. Kalen's military training kicked in, cutting through his fear. So they throw us into a death trap and see if we survive, and if we do somehow, it proves what? We're pure now? It proves your resonance with the Althari patterns is absolute, Lyraxis said. It is a test of fundamental compatibility at the deepest energetic and emotional levels. The Crimson Resonance faction believes you will fail. They believe your inherent non-resonance will cause the pairing to collapse. eliminating both of you. She met his gaze, and the silvery light in her eyes seemed to intensify. They have mandated that I be your pair. Kalen stared at her, the implications crashing over him. They weren't just judging him. They were using him to potentially eliminate her, or at least undermine her standing if she failed. And she was legally bound to accept. So, you and me, he said slowly, sent into a thunderdome to prove planar compatibility? To prove our resonance, Lyraxis corrected, her voice low. Or lack thereof. A different shimmer appeared on her skin, a deep, turbulent indigo. He realized with a jolt that it reflected distress, fear hidden beneath layers of ritual control. I am bound by the hegemony's laws, she said, her posture stiffening slightly. To refuse is to forfeit my standing, my lineage's honor. To accept is a profound risk. For both of them, Galen looked from her face, etched with a rare visible vulnerability, to the storm raging outside. His disgrace had followed him across the galaxy, right into the heart of an alien political struggle. And now his survival was inextricably linked to hers, bound by a ritual he didn't understand against an enemy who saw him as a plague. Well, Kalen said, trying for a return to his dry humor, guess I better work on my resonance then. Any tips? Lyraxis didn't smile. The indigo's shimmer lingered. The trial zone awaits, she said, her voice a somber echo of its usual resonance. To mower at the cycle's turning. The weight of her words settled heavily between them in the storm-lit room. This was no longer just about his judgment. It was about hers too, and the stakes were life and death. The trial zone wasn't a thunderdome in the gladiatorial sense, but a vast, contained environment that replicated some of the most volatile and dangerous atmospheric conditions of the gas scar, integrated with ancient Althari energy constructs and defensive systems. It was a crucible, designed to isolate, test, and break. Kalen and Lyraxis were transported there via a shimmering beam of light, materializing in a landscape of jagged crystal formations and swirling, corrosive mists. The air crackled with raw energy. They were given minimal supplies, survival suits, a small energy converter, and a single, intricately carved artifact, a resonance stone. Lyraxis explained, her voice hushed amidst the environmental roar, that the stone would guide them, react to their combined resonance, and would be their only key to activating certain pathways or defenses within the zone. The pathways are not fixed, she said, holding the glowing stone. Its light flickered faintly. They shift based on the energetic flow of the zone. And our own synchronization. Kalen suppressed a groan. His history with synchronization involved hitting buttons at the same time as other soldiers, not some esoteric, energetic coupling with an alien who was practically a walking ritual text. Their first challenge came quickly. The mist surrounding them began to solidify, forming crystalline sentinels that moved with unsettling speed and precision, their forms sharp and threatening. Lyraxis immediately adopted a defensive posture, her movements fluid and controlled. Kalen drew the energy rifle he'd been permitted to keep, a standard colonial fleet issue ironically effective against Althari tech, due to its brute force energy projection. Any chance these guys are allergic to pulse round? He muttered, aiming. They are energy constructs. Lyraxis replied, her eyes fixed on the approaching sentinels. The silvery glow was back in her eyes, sharper now, focused. Disrupt their internal resonance field. A direct energy burst might destabilize them. Got it. Shoot the glowy bits, Kalen said, and fired. His shot hit a sentinel square in its chest, causing it to shudder violently and dissipate into mist. But more were coming. Lyraxis moved, not engaging directly, but weaving through the formations, her hands moving in complex patterns near the resonance stone. As she moved, the stone pulsed with a brighter light, and shimmering shields of force flickered into existence around them, deflecting the sentinels' attacks. We must synchronize our energy signatures, she called over the roar of the environment. The stone amplifies our combined resonance. It creates the pathways, the defenses. Kalen ducked under a sweeping crystalline blade. Okay, synchronize how exactly? Is there an app for this? Focus your internal energy, Lyraxis instructed, her brow furrowed with concentration. Align your intent with mine, with the stone's frequency. Focus, internal energy? Kalen had no idea what his internal energy felt like. He was a soldier, not a mystic. But looking at Laraxis, her face set with grim determination, the faint indigo shimmer returning, he knew this wasn't a game. He focused on his will to survive, on the desperate need to get out of this trap. He focused on Laraxis, on her presence beside him, the only constant in this chaotic alien realm. He extended his hand towards the resonance stone she held. Tentatively, he touched her fingers. Her skin felt cool and smooth against his. A jolt went through him, not physical, but something deeper, an echo in his mind. The resonance stone flared with blinding light, and a wave of energy pulsed outwards, not just creating shields, but carving a temporary pathway through the solidifying mist. Now, Laraxis urged, pulling him forward. They ran, dodging the remaining sentinels, following the shimmering path. The act of touching, of linking their intentions, had done something. He felt connected to her, not just physically but in a way that bypassed words. It was unnerving and vital. As they ran, a fissure opened in the ground before them, spitting searing atmospheric gas. Laraxis stumbled back. The resonance stone pulsed erratically. "We are Senasync," she gasped, the indigo shimmer intensifying. "Our individual frequencies are conflicting." Kalen looked at the chasm, then at her. Conflict. Right. He was a walking conflict generator. He remembered her words, "Align your intent with mine." He needed to stop focusing on just getting himself out of this. He needed to focus on them, on surviving together. He took a deep breath, pushed down his fear and cynicism, and focused on her strength, her knowledge of this place, her desperate need to survive. He reached out and took her hand firmly. "Okay," he said, his voice steady. "My intent is simple. Get us across this gap, together." He squeezed her hand. "Your move, counselor." He felt this shift in her then, a subtle relaxation, a focus directed outwards instead of inwards. The resonance stone in her other hand flared again, and a bridge of solid light arced across the fissure. They crossed quickly, the air vibrating with contained power. He felt a strange warmth spread from where their hands were joined, a subtle hum that seemed to resonate within his own bones. This was more than just survival. It was a forced, intimate collaboration, testing not just their skills, but their very natures. And it was working. As they ventured deeper into the trial zone, the challenges grew more complex, requiring a deeper level of coordination. It wasn't just about fighting off energy constructs or navigating environmental hazards. They encountered puzzles woven into the very structure of the zone, tests of logic, perception, and synchronization. One such test involved a series of glowing glyphs etched into a massive crystal wall. They pulsed with light, shifting in sequence. To pass, they had to replicate the pattern using their hands, but the pattern was too complex for one person to follow alone. It required simultaneous action, perfect timing, and a shared understanding of the sequence. "It's a pulse cipher," Laraxis said, studying the shifting lights. The silvery glow in her eyes was bright now, focused on the task. "It requires not just observation, but sympathetic energy replication. Our movements must mirror the pattern's frequency." Kalen watched the lights. "Okay, so we both have to touch the glyphs in sequence. But doing it at the same time requires what? Are we thinking the same thoughts?" "Align your consciousness with mine," Laraxis instructed, taking a position before the wall. "Feel the rhythm of the pulses. Anticipate their flow. Become the pattern." Kalen felt hopelessly out of his depth. "Align my consciousness. Feel the rhythm." This was Althori mysticism, not military procedure. But he had to try. He stood beside her, placing his hand on the wall next to hers. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to block out the noise of the zone and focus on Laraxis, on the faint warmth emanating from her hand, on the subtle vibrations in the wall beneath his palm. He tried to empty his mind of his cynicism and fear, tried to perceive, and slowly, something shifted. It wasn't telepathy, not exactly, but a faint echo, a sense of her focus, her anticipation, her understanding of the rhythm. It was like hearing a song in a foreign language, but somehow feeling its beat. He opened his eyes. The glyphs pulsed. Laraxis moved her hand. Kalen, acting on instinct fueled by that strange echo of her perception, moved his hand to the next glyph in sequence. They continued like that, a silent dance, their hands moving in perfect, impossible synchronization, guided by a connection that bypassed conscious thought. The walls shimmered, then dissolved, revealing a passage beyond. They had done it. They had achieved resonance. As they moved through the passage, the air grew stiller, the energy less turbulent. They found a small, enclosed space, a respite perhaps, built into the trials. It was simple, with smooth crystal surfaces and a faint, calming hum. They shed their survival suits, the air here being breathable. The tension that had bound them during the trials began to loosen, replaced by a weary exhaustion. Laraxis sank onto a crystalline bench, leaning her head back against the cool surface. Her inner light was low, but the silvery glow remained in her eyes, reflecting the challenges overcome. "We resonated," she said softly, stating the fact with a touch of wonder in her voice. "Despite our disparate natures," Kalen said, sitting down across from her, feeling the ache in his muscles, the tension slowly bleeding away. "That was weird and kind of amazing." He looked at her, really looked at her, in the quiet stillness. Stripped of the rigid formality of the city temples, away from the watchful eyes of the hegemony, she seemed different. Still alien, undeniably, but more vulnerable, more. Her skin, free from the shimmering silks, seemed to hold a soft inner luminescence that wasn't tied to her mood. He noticed the subtle contours of her form, the elegant lines, the features that were both alien and captivating. "Your species relies heavily on this resonance," Kalen mused. "Is that how you bond? Connect?" Laraxis shifted slightly, her gaze dropping. A faint flush, a soft rose color, bloomed beneath the surface of her skin, a color he hadn't seen before. It was the most explicit emotional display he'd witnessed from her. "Resonance is fundamental," she said, her voice low. "It is the foundation of our relationships, our society, our understanding of the universe. A deep resonance, a true, but it is the basis of the most profound connections, including mating pairings." The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Mating pairings, the ritual survival pairing, had unexpectedly triggered something deeper, something that went beyond just navigating the trials. They hadn't just survived together, they had synced, and in Althari culture sync meant something significant. He looked at her, at the soft rose blush, at the hesitant way she met his gaze, the forced proximity, the shared trauma, the impossible synchronicity. It had led them here, to this quiet moment of vulnerability in the heart of the trial zone. And the air between them, thick with unspoken possibilities, vibrated with a different kind of tension entirely. A romantic progression was taking root, unexpected and potent. The quiet respite in the enclosed space felt like an attendant and a fleeting moment all at once. The external dangers were momentarily paused, replaced by an internal landscape of burgeoning awareness. Kalen watched Laraxis, the rose blush still faint on her skin. She was the embodiment of everything alien and unknown. Yet the shared experience of the trials had stripped away layers of formality and reserve, revealing a depth of character he hadn't anticipated. He saw not just the ritual-bound heiress, but a woman under immense pressure, capable of remarkable resilience and, unexpectedly, a profound connection. "Mating pairings," Kalen said, breaking the silence softly. "Is that what this survival pairing ritual is for, usually? To find mates?" Laraxis lifted her head, her gaze steady now though the rose lingered. "It was originally designed as a test of deep compatibility during times of crisis," she explained, "to identify individuals capable of forming unbreakable bonds necessary for survival. Over cycles it has become formalized, ritualized, sometimes used to validate prearranged pairings, sometimes to forge new ones under pressure. A successful resonance in the trial zone is considered the highest form of validation for a bond." She paused. "It signifies fundamental compatibility." Kalen absorbed this. Fundamental compatibility, tested by dodging plasma and solving energy ciphers. It was bizarre, and yet given the intensity of what they just experienced, it also felt real. He felt a pull towards her, a recognition on a level beyond the intellectual. It wasn't just attraction, though that was certainly present. It was a sense of being seen, of being understood in a way he hadn't been by anyone in a long time, especially not since his disgrace. And if the resonance is very strong, he asked, his voice low. The air in the small chamber seemed to thicken. Laraxis met his gaze directly. Her eyes, still with that soft silvery glow, held an intensity that mirrored his own questions. The rose blush deepened. A powerful sink in the trial zone can initiate a physical manifestation of the bond, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A merging of energies. Resonance coupling. She gestured vaguely towards him, then herself. It is the culmination of the ritual, the physical expression of perfect synchronization. Kalen's mind reeled. Resonance coupling, merging of energies. It sounded like something from a bad sci-fi novel, except it was happening here, now, potentially with him. And Laraxis, this formal, restrained alien, was describing it with a quiet vulnerability that was utterly disarming. The shared trauma, the emotional intensity of their survival, the inexplicable connection forged through the resonance stone. It had all built to this point. The space between them felt charged, vibrating with an energy that was undeniably sexual, yet also something far more profound. This wasn't about casual physical release. It was about a ritual culmination, a deep, perhaps involuntary, response to their unexpected bond. Laraxis stood slowly, her movements graceful and deliberate. She approached him, stopping just before him. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and placed it on his chest, over his heart. He could feel the warmth of her palm through his thin clothing, the subtle hum of her internal energy. The resonance stone, it amplified our connection, she whispered, her gaze locked with his. It initiated the process within us. The trial zone demands completion. He could feel the truth of her words resonate within him, a strange echo deep in his core. His body was reacting not just to her proximity, but to something else, something tied to the resonance. It was a physical need born of energetic alignment, a primal drive overlaid with alien ritual. He reached up and gently touched her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. Her skin felt cool and smooth, the rose color vivid beneath his touch. Her eyes closed for a moment, a shudder went through her. Laraxis, he breathed, her name feeling foreign and perfect on his tongue. She leaned into his touch, a soft sound escaping her lips, a sound that was utterly, unexpectedly human in its vulnerability. The reserve was gone, replaced by a raw, potent need. The sexual tension, slow burned through days of cultural clashes and shared danger, was reaching its peak, intertwined with the ritual significance of their bond. The environment around them seemed to fade. The only reality, the space between them, the shared breath, the thrumming energy that connected them. This was the core of the ritual, the unavoidable culmination of their. The resonance coupling began not with haste, but with a strange, inevitable grace. Laraxis initiated it, guided by instinct and ritual law interwoven into her being. Her touch on Kalen's chest deepened, and he felt a wave of energy flow from her, warm and pulsing, entering him not just through his skin, but seemingly permeating his very cells. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. More than physical touch, more than electrical current, emerging on a fundamental level. His own body responded, generating its own heat, its own energy, drawn towards hers like iron filings to a magnet. They shed the rest of their survival gear. The simple act of undressing becoming part of the ritualistic unveiling, a shedding of external defenses in preparation for internal connection. Her form was beautiful, alien, possessing anatomical differences that no longer seemed strange, but simply the subtle inner luminescence of her skin, intensified, pulsing in sync with the energy flow between them. He saw the intricate patterns of veins and energy channels beneath her skin, glowing softly, a map of her unique biology. She guided him, her hands sure and knowing, her voice a low resonance that seemed to bypass his ears and speak directly to his consciousness. This was an instructional scene, an alien teaching a human about the deepest form of connection in her culture, a merging of bodies driven by a merging of souls and energy. Their movements were slow, deliberate, each touch, each joining, accompanied by a surge of resonant energy that built and built. There was no awkwardness, only a profound sense of rightness, as if their bodies, despite their differences, were designed to fit together in this specific, resonant way. When their forms finally united, it wasn't just physical penetration, it was a complete merging of energy fields, a dissolution of boundaries. Kalen felt his own consciousness expand, briefly touching the edges of hers. He saw flashes of images, not his own, glimpses of ancient cities, vast energy flows, the deep, resonant hum of her people's history. He felt echoes of her emotions, the weight of her duty, the loneliness of her position, the surprising current of hope that now intertwined with his own presence. Her skin shimmered with vibrant, shifting colors now. Azure, gold, violet, rose, all swirling together in a breathtaking display of raw emotion and unleashed energy. A soft, melodic sound escaped her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated sensation, of deep, profound connection. He mirrored her sounds, his own voice rough and human, expressing the overwhelming pleasure and the awe of this alien intimacy. This was combat-driven release, after battle, yes, but also a ritual merging through alien senses, a telepathic sync triggering physical need. It was everything at once, overwhelming and transformative. The climax was not just a physical peak, but an explosion of light and energy within the enclosed space, a wave of pure resonance that left them trembling, intricately connected. They lay intertwined, their energy fields slowly stabilizing, the vibrant colors on Loraxus's skin gradually fading back to their subtle luminescence. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the echoes of their shared experience. Kalen held her close, his arms wrapped around her slender but strong form, his face buried in the curve of her neck. He could feel the steady thrum of her pulse, the soft warmth of her skin. He had been a disgraced soldier, lost and alone in an alien world. Now he was bound to an alien heiress by a ritual of survival, and a merging of energies that felt more real, more absolute, than anything he had ever known. The post-sex scene function was immediate. An emotional reversal. The vulnerability was absolute. The commitment shift, though unspoken, was inherent in the act. They were no longer just a human and an alien paired for a trial. They were two beings fundamentally connected, their destinies now inextricably linked by the resonance coupling. The external threat still loomed. Elder Cygnus and his faction would not be pleased by their success. But in this moment, in the quiet aftermath of their merging, the world outside faded. There was only them, the echoes of the sync still vibrating between them, and the daunting, beautiful, terrifying reality of what they had just become. The air in the small enclosure cooled slowly, the residual energy from their resonance coupling dissipating like morning mist. They remained intertwined for a long time, simply breathing, the quiet humming of the space the only sound. The raw vulnerability exposed during the merging lingered, a palpable presence between them. Kalen was the first to stir fully, carefully shifting so he could look at Loraxus. Her eyes were open, watching him with an expression he still couldn't quite decipher. A blend of awe, exhaustion, and a deep, unsettling calm. Her skin had returned to its subtle luminescence, but he could now see faint, intricate patterns beneath the surface, swirling constellations of energy that hadn't been visible before. It was as if the merging had made him attuned to aspects of her biology he hadn't been able to perceive before. "Loraxus," he said, his voice rough. "What? What just happened?" She reached up and touched his cheek, her fingers cool against his skin. "The coupling," she said, her voice regaining a fraction of its usual resonance, but softer, more intimate. "It is the completion of the trial zone ritual, when profound resonance is achieved. Our energies, they synchronized utterly. It created a permanent bond. Permanent." The word resonated in his mind. Deep and absolute. Not just a successful survival pairing, but a permanent bond. In his world, bonds were fragile things, easily broken by distance, betrayal, or death. Here, it was a fundamental alignment of being. "Permanent," he repeated. Like marriage?" Loraxus hesitated, a faint violet shimmer appearing at her temples. "It is beyond your concept of marriage," she said carefully. "It is a joining of essences. In the eyes of the hegemony, a successful resonance coupling in the trial zone signifies the strongest possible bond. It is ritually binding. A mating pair." He felt a jolt. Mating pair. He, Kalen, the disgraced human soldier, was now ritually bound to Laraxis, the Althari heiress. This wasn't just a complication. It was a seismic event in their respective lives. And in the political landscape of the floating city temples, the hegemony, Kalen said, sitting up fully, the weight of the outside world crashing back in. "What happens now? We passed the trial. Coupled. Does that change anything with Elder Cygnus and his faction?" Laraxis sat up as well, pulling a discarded silk wrap around herself. Her expression became more guarded, the heiress returning, though still softened by the lingering intimacy. "It changes everything," she said, her voice growing firmer. "According to ancient law, a successful resonance coupling in the trial zone validates the compatibility of the paired individuals, regardless of lineage or origin. It proves their inherent resonance with the Althari patterns. It should grant you protection. It should solidify my position." She paused, her eyes distant for a moment. "However, the Crimson Resonance faction interprets the laws through the lens of purity and tradition. They may argue that your alien nature invalidates the coupling, or that my participation in the trial was a transgression in itself. So, they might still try to eliminate me," Kalen stated flatly. "And probably you too, for being contaminated by the impure human." A sharp indigo shimmer pulsed through her skin. "They cannot directly disregard the ritual outcome," Laraxis said, her gaze hardening, "but they can manipulate the interpretation of the laws. They can challenge the validity of the sync. They could claim the resonance was forced or incomplete. They could attempt to purify the bond." Purify? Kalen didn't like the sound of that. What does purify mean in this context? "It is a dangerous concept," she said, her voice tight. "In extreme cases, historic records speak of rituals to sever incompatible bonds, cleanse one being's essence of another's. It is rumored to be damaging, perhaps fatal." The warmth of their intimacy faded, replaced by the chilling reality of their situation. They had survived the trial, but their victory had only intensified the political conflict. Their bond, meant to protect them, might now be the very thing targeted by their enemies. "So," Kalen said, the cynicism creeping back into his voice, a familiar shield against the rising fear. "My failure of judgment got me discharged, and my unexpected success at alien ritual sex might just get us both killed. My life's just one big cosmic punchline, isn't it?" Laraxis looked at him, and for the first time he saw a flicker of amusement in her eyes, quickly veiled but undeniably present. The dry humor, rooted in irony, registered even with her alien sensibilities. "Your humor is peculiar," she said, her voice softer than usual. "But your assessment is not entirely inaccurate." She reached out again, her hand resting on his arm. The intricate patterns beneath her skin pulsed softly, where she touched him. "We are bound now, Kalen, by law, by energy. This," she gestured between them, encompassing their shared space, their shared experience. "We face the hegemony together. Our resonance is our defense." It was a powerful statement, a commitment masked as a strategic declaration. They were a unit now, a mating pair in the eyes of an ancient alien law, facing down a powerful traditionalist faction. The vulnerability of their intimacy had led directly into the heart of the external conflict. Their bond was forged in the crucible of survival and ritual, and now they had to fight for its very existence. Emerging from the trial zone was like stepping back into a world rendered simultaneously familiar and utterly alien. The floating city temples, previously a place of bewildering wonder and polite constraint, now felt like a tense stage where a high-stakes drama was about to unfold, with Kalen and Laraxis at its center. They were escorted directly to the Chamber of Resonance, a vast, echoing hall, lined with towering crystalline columns that hummed with latent power. The air was thick with energy and the silent judgment of the assembled Althari leaders. Elder Cygnus was there, at the head of the Crimson Resonance faction, his presence radiating cold disapproval. Other elders, representing different bloodlines and interpretations of the laws, were also present, their expressions ranging from guarded neutrality to veiled curiosity. Loraxus stood tall beside Kalen, her posture regal and composed, though he could feel the subtle tension in her hand where it rested lightly on his arm. The intricate patterns beneath her skin were visible now to his eyes, pulsing faintly, reflecting the internal energy glow that bound them. She presented the resonance stone, now glowing with a steady, vibrant light, a testament to their successful coupling. She spoke, addressing the assembled elders in formal, resonant language, outlining their journey through the trial zone and the undeniable outcome of their ritual pairing. Her voice, usually so controlled, held an undercurrent of steel, a quiet defiance that Kalen admired. Elder Cygnus responded, his voice a deep, rumbling resonance laced with sharp edges of accusation. He spoke of ancient impurities, of the disruption caused by the outworlder, of the potential for a false resonance that could contaminate the pure lineages. He challenged the validity of their bond, suggesting the human's inherent lack of resonance made true coupling impossible, implying Loraxus had somehow been deceived or forced. Kalen understood only fragments of the language, but the tone, the body language, the angry crimson pulsing beneath Cygnus's skin, it was universally understood as hostility. When Cygnus finished, the hall fell silent, the tension palpable. This was the moment of truth, the judgment they had been preparing for. Loraxus met Elder Cygnus's gaze, her own eyes glowing with that steady, silvery light that Kalen now associated with her deepest resolve. The trial zone does not lie, she stated, her voice clear and strong. The resonance stone does not deceive. The coupling was achieved. Our sync was absolute. She turned slightly, drawing Kalen closer. He is not outworlder, she declared. He is my bound pair. His resonance is intertwined with mine. To challenge our bond is to challenge the ancient law itself. A murmur went through the assembly. Challenging the ancient law was a serious accusation, even against the powerful Crimson Resonance faction. Elder Cygnus's face tightened, the crimson deepening to a furious scarlet. Your judgment is clouded by this anomaly, he thundered, pointing a trembling finger at Kalen. His essence is incompatible. The bond is a perversion. Before Kalen could stop himself, before Loraxus could intervene, he spoke, his voice rough and human, cut through the resonant alien speech. Incompatible, he said, stepping slightly forward. You think you know compatibility? You think you know resonance? He looked from Elder Cygnus to the other assembled elders. We went into that zone, he continued, his voice gaining strength, fueled by the raw energy of the coupling still thrumming within him. We faced down your constructs, your hazards, your puzzle. We didn't just survive. We synced on a level I didn't even know existed. He looked at Loraxus, at the subtle, intricate patterns on her skin, now vividly clear to him. I saw her thoughts, felt her fear. We became one energy flow, one mind, working together. He turned back to the elders. If that's not resonance, if that's not compatibility, he challenged, then your laws are meaningless. He gestured between himself and Loraxus. This isn't a perversion. This is the real deal, more real than anything I've ever experienced. And you, he fixed his gaze on Elder Cygnus, you're just scared because something you don't understand, something you can't control, just proved you wrong. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. A human, speaking out of turn, using blunt, emotional language, challenging an elder. Loraxus laid a hand on his arm, a silent signal to stop, but also he felt a surge of approval, of shared defiance. Elder Cygnus was incandescent with rage, his entire form pulsing with angry crimson. Such arrogance, he roared, such blasphemy. This confirms his impurity. He must be cleansed. He moved forward, his attendants stirring behind him. The external plot claimed here, driven by the antagonist reaction to their bonded intimacy. Loraxus stepped in front of Kalen, shielding him. The silvery light in her eyes intensified, blindingly bright. He is under my protection, she declared, her voice vibrating with power that resonated through the chamber. Our bond is recognized by the ancient law. Any aggression towards him is an aggression against the hegemony itself. The air crackled with tension. Rival bloodlines, interpretations of ancient law, a corrupted priesthood intent on maintaining power through purity. It all converged on this moment. Kalen felt the energy building within Lyraxis, mirroring the residual resonance in himself. They were bound, and their very existence as a bonded pair was a challenge to the established order. The fight was not over. It had just begun. The confrontation in the chamber of resonance didn't immediately devolve into violence, though the air remained thick with unspoken threats. Lyraxis's forceful declaration, backed by the undeniable evidence of the resonance stone and their shared energy signature, which Kalen could feel thrumming strongly between them, gave the other elders pause. The ancient laws governing resonance couplings were absolute, even for the Crimson Resonance faction. They could argue interpretation, but openly defying a validated bond was a path fraught with its own dangers within Althari society. Instead of a physical attack, Elder Cygnus launched a legalistic one. He demanded a formal review of the trial parameters, the resonance stone's calibration, and Lyraxis's own adherence to ritual protocol. He argued that her desperation to secure her position had led her to manipulate the outcome. It was a desperate move aimed at undermining her credibility and, by extension, the validity of their bond. The following cycles were consumed by this complex, frustrating legal battle. Kalen and Lyraxis were kept under close observation, though less as prisoners and more as key figures in a political firestorm. They spent hours in consultation with Lyraxis's advisors and sympathetic elders from other bloodlines, painstakingly recounting their experience in the trial zone, explaining the nuances of their unexpected sync. Kalen, with his blunt human perspective, found the intricate legal arguments baffling, relying on Lyraxis to translate the complex interplay of ritual, law, and political maneuvering. During this time, their bond deepened. The constant pressure from the Crimson Resonance faction forced them into closer proximity and constant collaboration. They were a team, bound by ritual and shared danger. In the quiet moments between consultations and formal sessions, they really spoke, to each other. Kalen told her about Earth, about his life before the military, about the failure of judgment that had cost him everything. He confessed the bitterness and the lingering guilt. Lyraxis listened, her gaze steady, the intricate patterns on her skin subtly reflecting his emotions in a way that was profoundly validating. He felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. Lyraxis, in turn, revealed more about the pressures of her position as heiress, the expectations placed upon her, the loneliness of living a life dictated by ancient rituals. She spoke of the history of the hegemony, the schism with the Crimson Resonance faction over interpretations of purity and resonance, and the long-standing political struggle that had now ensnared Kalen. She confessed the fear she had felt entering the trial zone with him, knowing the stakes, and the sheer unexpected wonder of feeling their energies sync. "I was prepared for many outcomes in the trial zone," she admitted one cycle, as they sat together in a private chamber, the city lights glowing softly outside. "Failure, struggle, perhaps even a controlled completion. But I was not prepared for this." So she gestured between them. "For the depth of the sync, for the way your essence resonates with mine. It is profound." "Yeah," Kalen said softly, reaching out to take her hand. The contact sent a familiar warmth through him. Profound is a good word for it. Also maybe insane, given, everything. Lyraxis offered a small, genuine smile, a rare sight that transformed her face. The rose blush appeared, soft and lovely. "Insane is a human concept, is it not?" she said. "We might call it a deviation from expected resonance flow." "Right," Kalen chuckled dryly. "Expected resonance flow. Guess I've never been great at sticking to the script." Their intimacy had caused an emotional reversal, leading to this deeper vulnerability in mutual confession. The battle for their bond continued in the formal chambers, but in private the bond itself flourished. They were learning to navigate not just the complexities of Althari culture, but the even greater complexity of their own unique, resonant connection. The trial had forged them into a unit, and now they had to face the consequences. Together. The ritual completion of their bond, validated by the trial zone and defended by Lyraxis, was slowly gaining acceptance among the other elders. Elder Cygnus's arguments, based more on prejudice than evidence, were beginning to lose traction. Their survival, their undeniable resonance, was proving to be the most powerful argument of all. The final judgment in the Chamber of Resonance was less a dramatic pronouncement and more a formal acceptance of an undeniable reality. After cycles of debate and review, the Council of Elders, excluding the dissenting Crimson Resonance faction, formally recognized the validity of Kalen and Lyraxis's resonance coupling. Their bond was declared legitimate under ancient law, establishing Kalen not as an outworlder anomaly, but as a bound resonator, ritually tied to Lyraxis and, by extension, to the hegemony of resonance. Elder Cygnus and his followers withdrew, their defeat evident in their stiff postures and the simmering crimson beneath their skin. They hadn't succeeded in severing the bond or eliminating Kalen, but their opposition lingered, a shadow on the edges of their victory. For Kalen and Lyraxis, the ruling brought both relief and the daunting realization of what it truly meant. They were bound, legally and energetically. Their lives, once separate and distinct, were now irrevocably intertwined within the intricate framework of Althari society. This was the ritual completion, the acceptance of their unique marriage. They returned to Lyraxis's sector of the city, no longer confined to observation chambers but moving as a Rishan pair. The atmosphere towards them had shifted. The subtle hostility from some quarters remained, particularly from those aligned with the Crimson Resonance, but there was also curiosity, respect, and even a sense of wonder from others. Kalen was no longer just a curiosity. He was Lyraxis's bound resonator, a living testament to a rare and powerful sync. Adjusting to their new reality was a process. Kalen had to learn to navigate Althari customs, not as an outsider being judged, but as an integrated, albeit highly unusual member of the hegemony. Lyraxis guided him patiently, teaching him the subtle nuances of resonance communication, the complex social protocols, the significance of the intricate energy flows that permeated their city. He still used his dry humor, still occasionally stumbled over cultural differences, but now it was met with a blend of amusement and affection from Lyraxis, rather than formal confusion. Their relationship deepened in the quiet rhythm of their shared lives. The intimacy of the trial zone had forged a foundation, but their connection grew stronger in the mundane details. Sharing meals, walking the glowing pathways, simply existing in each other's presence. The energetic bond between them was a constant, subtle awareness of the other, a quiet hum beneath the surface of their consciousness. They could feel each other's emotional states with remarkable clarity. Lyraxis's physical shimmers now a language. Kalen was learning to read fluently. The constant pressure had forced them into a shared vulnerability that had become the bedrock of their trust. One evening, standing on a high platform overlooking the vast starlit expanse below, Lyraxis turned to him. The subtle patterns beneath her skin pulsed with a soft, warm light. "Before you arrived," she said, her voice quiet, "my life was predetermined. Bound by ritual and expectation, I understood my duty, but there was little resonance." She met his gaze, her eyes glowing with that soft, silvery light. "You brought chaos, disruption, and a resonance I never believed possible." Kalen reached out and took her hand, bringing it to his lips. He kissed her palm, feeling the faint thrum of her energy. "Chaos is kind of my default setting," he murmured. "Glad I could bring some expected deviation to your life." He smiled, a genuine, open smile. "You saved me, Lyraxis, out there and in here." He gestured to the city, to the life they were building. "You gave me a reason to be more than just the guy who messed up." He looked at her, at the beautiful alien woman, who was now his partner, his mate, his resonance. "I don't know what the future holds. Your elder still hates me. Your culture is still baffling sometimes. But I'm not alone anymore, and I wouldn't trade this bond for anything." Lyraxis squeezed his hand, the light on her skin brightening. The final resolution was here. Two beings from vastly different worlds, bound by an unexpected resonance, building a life together against the backdrop of a complex alien society. It was tense, bittersweet, hopeful, and undeniably romantic. The disgraced human soldier and the ritual-bound alien heiress, finding connection and belonging in the most improbable of circumstances, their story woven into the very fabric of the floating city temples. Their life together settled into a unique rhythm, a blend of ancient Althari ritual and human pragmatism. Kalen, now formally recognized as Lyraxis's bound resonator, was integrated into her household and her duties, though not without lingering suspicion from the Crimson Resonance faction. Elder Cygnus remained a potent adversary, challenging Lyraxis's decisions in Kalen's presence at every turn, often through veiled accusations of impure influence or unbalanced resonance. This external pressure, however, only served to strengthen the bond between Kalen and Lyraxis, forcing them to rely on each other, to anticipate each other's needs and strategies. Kalen, with his military background, brought a pragmatic, often unconventional approach to problem-solving that complemented Lyraxis's deep understanding of Althari law and tradition. He learned to read the subtle shifts in the city's energy fields, to understand the complex interplay of political power and ritual significance. He was no longer just surviving, he was actively participating in the life of the hegemony, finding a new purpose alongside Lyraxis. Their home within the floating city temples was a blend of their two worlds. Lyraxis's chambers were filled with intricate Althari artifacts and humming energy conduits, but Kalen added touches of his own, salvage tech from his ship, a worn photo of his family on Earth, a source of quiet fascination for Lyraxis, a battered old dataputer loaded with human music and literature. He taught her about Earth idioms, about the chaotic beauty of human emotions, about the concept of unconditional love, which she found both baffling and deeply moving. She taught him about the resonance of the ancestors, about the flow of energetic harmony, about the responsibility that came with being a part of something ancient and profound. Their physical intimacy remained a deep and resonant experience, a reminder of the bond forged in the trial zone. The pulse resonance sync was now a natural part of their connection, a way to communicate emotions and intentions that transcended words. Lyraxis's skin would shimmer with vibrant colors when she was happy, or stressed, or simply felt a strong connection to him. Kalen, in turn, found he could influence the ambient energy in their shared space with his own emotional state, a strange and powerful ability unlocked by the coupling. The future was not without its challenges. The Crimson Resonance faction continued its opposition, seeking any opportunity to undermine their position. Other bloodlines watched, waiting to see if this unprecedented human-alien pairing would truly bring strength or instability to the hegemony. There were still moments of cultural misunderstanding, of frustration born from vastly different upbringings and worldviews, but they faced it together. One cycle, during a rare moment of quiet contemplation, Kalen sat with Lyraxis by a window overlooking the swirling gas scar below, the very place where his old life had ended and his new one began. Lyraxis rested her head on his shoulder, her presence a comforting weight against him. "Do you miss your world, Kalen?" she asked softly. "Your Earth?" He thought about it for a moment, about the gray skies, the crowded cities, the endless struggle. He missed the familiarity. Maybe he missed the easy understanding of his own species, but he didn't miss the loneliness, the feeling of being adrift even amongst his own kind. "Yeah," he said, "sometimes. But this," he squeezed her hand, looking out at the alien beauty of the floating city. "This is my world now, and you're my home." Lyraxis shifted, turning to look at him, her eyes glowing with a soft, steady light. A faint, beautiful rose color spread across her skin. "And you," she said, her voice filled with a resonance that went straight to his core, "are mine." Their story was a testament to unexpected connections, to the possibility of love and belonging in the most alien of places, forged in chaos and validated by resonance. The disgraced soldier and the ritual-bound heiress, bound by a destiny neither could have predicted, finding peace and purpose in each other's arms, navigating the complexities of a world built on ancient law and cosmic energy together.